Good afternoon. I see people joining us quickly, so I'm going to give you a minute or two to come into the meeting. I am so excited about this conversation because I know each one of these amazing, courageous women and have had an opportunity to work with them over the years. And today is going to be a great conversation. We are going to begin with a couple of questions and kind of flow, kind of like a river, we'll flow today. The conversation will begin, and then I'll also be monitoring the chat area so that if you have questions you'd like to ask, I will be watching for them and will either answer them as we go along, or at the end we should have a little bit of time for Q&A or additional comments. But it is terrific to have you with us, and I thank Tammy very much for setting this up. And we also have support from Michael Kane. And we couldn't do it without a team of support. So we have about 36. I think I have 88 signed up. So we give just another minute before we start. Let you get settled in and ready for the conversation. I was really excited to be doing this conversation with pioneers because I too am a pioneer of sorts. I was the first class of women to attend the University of Virginia, so with the arts and sciences. So I know a little bit about pioneering, but not like the women today. This is part of our living history session, and it's just going to be a lot of fun. We did a prep session yesterday, and I really enjoyed it. I know that you are able to and have read the bios for each of these individuals, so I'm not going to go into a lengthy reading of bios. In fact, I'm going to invite our speakers to do a little bit of intro on their own. And I'm going to go ahead and start because I'm just really eager to get going. The first question I have for you all, I've called you pioneers. I've called you pioneers in the profession and in life. And I'm really curious about how you came to be a pioneer and any roadblocks that may have been in your way. I think of you as courageous women, and I'm curious how you began this journey. Let me ask Valerie to start.
Do you want us to do the self-introduction, or do you want us?
Yes, please self-intro and weave in the
alrighty, sounds good.
Roadblocks.
Given the nature of the group today, I'm going to talk a little bit more personally than I might, because I think it's often important for other women to understand the real obstacles and the preparation that is needed for a senior executive level position. So I'm going to really talk about my background and my history, and I'm going to start with asking that the question. I think most of you are probably familiar with the work of W.E.B. Du Bois. Along with his extensive writing and research and advocacy, he is known for his philosophical debates, particularly with Booker T. Washington, founder and president of Tuskegee Normal and Industrial Institute. The philosophical difference was fundamentally about whether African Americans should focus on agricultural training or academic pursuits, and for accepting racial segregation or fighting for integration and promotion of what Du Bois called the talented 10th. So I grew up in a family and community that saw my generation as the one to prove the talents of African Americans at the end of legal segregation, the first to integrate public facilities. I was expected to go to college, to make a difference, to lead, and to serve. So I went to college knowing that I wanted to work in government to change the system without becoming the system. I majored in political science and urban sociology at Mizzou and interned in the State House with my local state representative. The experience of working in the State House as an aide and then growing up in St. Louis with a strong ward political system made me look at the council manager plan. Though I was torn between a career as a diplomat or a city manager, as fate intervened, my first job was with the city of Kansas City, Missouri, a strong council manager community. I was loaned from the KC to the feds, and learned that it was local government, not the federal government, where I was most interested, because that's where policy execution occurred. The impact of what you did was visible every single day. Lastly, I worked for Marion Barry in Washington, D.C., and that was an amazing learning experience for a young professional. And it really prepared me for the politics of public administration, the importance of good staff work, and the value of moral grounding. I've been a city manager in 3 communities, a public utility commissioner, and now I study as the director of research at the Kettering Foundation, how to make democracy work as it should.
Thank you, Val. Yes, absolutely. I know you'll give us a little bit more of your background as we go along. That was a great introduction. So Peggy, I'm coming to you next. Would you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started on this courageous road path?
Yeah, thanks, Felissa. Glad to be here today. I see a few names across the screen that I recognize, and glad to have you all on board with us for this conversation. So a lot like Valerie, in some ways, I came up with the expectation of, getting my learning and my education and going to college. I actually was the first woman on my mother's side, actually on either side of my parents' family, to go to college. And then, so I got an undergraduate degree from Converse College, which is currently this year a women's college, and I got my MPA from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, and really went to college thinking I was going to be a teacher of civics and American history in high school, and changed my mind for various reasons, and was looking for what I was going to do with my life. It did not include being a lawyer, which is what my father wanted me to be, and I did not want to be, and kind of but I loved government, had done a internship in Congress, and decided the feds was a little too much for me. And my advisor basically said, well, they have a city manager in Spartanburg, it's local government, why don't you go talk to him and see if that's what you like. And as we discussed a little yesterday, cold called the city manager. He's like, sure, come on in, I'm glad to speak with you. Spent about 30 minutes with him. It was a great conversation, which is part of why when people call, I always take that call, because you never know if you're influencing someone, hopefully in a positive way, to come into this great local government profession. I started at the city of Decatur, Georgia, because there are lots of Decatur, city of Decatur, Georgia. 10 days after my last graduate school exam, I had just turned 22. Did personnel, I was the personnel director there for about 6 years, the assistant city manager for 4, and I was the city manager for a little over 25 years. And after about 35 and a half years or so there, I retired at the end of 2018. So for 2019 and 2020, I have my own consulting firm where I do some in non-COVID times, do seminars and organizational development, innovation, all of that good stuff, which is really where my passion is. I grew up with a government that the first day I was there, they basically said, we don't believe in anything called good enough for government work. We want to be the best of what we can be, and in an organization that was really helpful with innovation. So I did a lot of exciting things there. But since then, I've been an interim manager in the city of Sandy Springs, Georgia, which is a very large city, about the 10th largest city in Georgia, 1,000 plus employees, 100 million budget. And since October, I have been the acting city administrator for the city of Pine Lake, Georgia, which is 750 people and a quarter square mile. I call it a micro city. We have 8 full-time employees, of which I'm one of them. But there's still, the fun thing about it is you're still leading and managing people and progress. And so I'm having a really good time in my not retirement stage of life.
Love it. Yeah, we got to keep sharing those gifts. Sherry Suttles, would you talk for a moment about how you got into this profession?
Yes, thank you. I was saying in the prep session that it's either my DNA or the environment, but I used to be in charge of everything in our neighborhood in Detroit. I started the bank, I started the hospital, and I was the CEO of it. So I think there was something about leadership early on in my life. And then I was prepped by my mother to go to college, get a master's degree. And then you can think about family and work. We'll talk about that later. But I did go to all the right schools. Barnard College, a women's school, Peggy, since 1800. I think we go back that far. And that was a very good foundation for me in political science and government at the time. I thought I would go diplomat international, but I made a trip my junior year to Africa with the Operation Crossroads group. And it was mind blowing and mind opening. And I decided, with 68 being what it was, Martin Luther King Jr. assassinated and the riots and takeover of these college Black students did. I did a film about it. I decided maybe I better look at local government. And I chose government as a sophomore. I came there looking to be a teacher, a social worker, whatever women usually do at that point in the 50s and 60s. But I took psychology 101, biology, what all those different intro courses. When I got to government 101, Mayor John Lindsay had walked the streets of Harlem. And soon after college, we had the ascension of Shirley Chisholm to run for president. So there were very much motivation on my part academically and in the world around me. So I decided to plunge into city manager. And as I told you yesterday, we're doing a documentary. I'll talk more about it. Every single one of the trailblazers in our film said the same thing that I said. We didn't know what a city manager was. What did a city manager do? We were from mayor kinds of cities, except Cy Murray was actually a city manager, city Miami. So anyway, I was in a program at the University of Michigan where I got my master's in public policy. And all those students had come through, the Black students, through a program sponsored by HUD and ICMA and the Ford Foundation. So when it was over, they got placement assistance. I called Don Board, then at ICMA. I said, listen, I'm not in this program. I came a different way. I'm a woman, I'm Black, and I want to be a city manager, which I didn't know what was. And he hired me through other candidates, of course. And I worked 2.5 years at ICMA. And how I got to be a leader in it was Sylvester Murray. He was one of the 3 Black city managers serving at the time that we knew about. There were no women that anybody knew about, except by female-looking names, which could also have been a male. So I carved out that for me to pursue, and I did diligently for about 7 years before I became what is my claim to fame now, the first African-American female manager in the nation. And it was in Oberlin, Ohio, 1979.
Thank you, Sherry. Yes, yes. Thank you so much. All right. Great beginning. And I want to go back to the roadblock question for just a moment. And Sherry, I'm going to start with you. What kind of roadblocks may have stepped in your way?
Well, as I was thinking about this word, we're using it in our film too. I didn't think of anything as being a roadblock. I thought of it as something just to knock over and get into. But I know, because I applied for 21 other cities before Oberlin, and people were looking at me saying, we don't want you to be our first Black female city manager. But Oberlin, which had a history of bringing in students, female students and African-American students early on, they were receptive. I was one of 168 applicants in that city. So I don't know what I think of mostly, and I'm told by my beloved son, age 38, oh, Mom, you know you got that job because of affirmative action. And my dad used to tell me that too. And I think that's only right, because the blocks that were there, we helped to move them away, as Valerie said, by being prepared, being on the spot, and being invited. So of course there were sexism and racism kinds of issues to deal with, but I never let it stop me from going on to what I thought I was destined to do.
I have a feeling not much would stop you. Thank you. Thank you, Sherry. Peggy, I'd like to come to you next and have you talk for just a moment about sort of the career path and how you began it and moved through the many wonderful years in Decatur.
Well, sure. I came right out of graduate school, and at that point at Chapel Hill, you did all of your coursework in a calendar year, and then you did either an internship or a work experience for the next kind of year and wrote your major paper and all that stuff. So, and before the Great Recession we had, 1983 was the last really great recession, and so we were all out there looking for jobs, and I was very fortunate in finding the city of Decatur right when I needed it. And I was really excited in the interview because they got paid every week. And I was like, this is a wonderful place. I get paid every week. And so I went there and told them I would stay 2 years. And as it turns out, about 33 and a half more overstayed my welcome, probably. Sometimes I thought, but not really. So I was really fortunate. I was hired as the personnel director for the city, was in the city manager's office. I had two great mentors that I worked with, Cal Horton, who was then the assistant city manager. He went on to be the city manager actually in Chapel Hill, town manager in Chapel Hill, and Curtis Branscombe, who was an awesome city manager. Went to stayed in the profession, and he was great. He passed away just about shortly a year ago. And they were the kinds of people who had come to Decatur to really be supportive of kind of building the new organization, right? The organization of the future. So they were very, very much proactive in hiring women and African Americans and kind of trying to change up the whole dynamic. So that was a really great experience to start with. I mean, they kind of were doing diversity before we were supposed to be doing diversity. And they were very supportive of me. At one point, about a year in or so, Cal came to me and said, do you want to be a personnel director or do you want to be a city manager? And I was like, well, no, I want to be a city manager. And he asked me that because he wanted, the root of his question was, what kind of professional development do you want us to support you in, right? City manager. And so they said, okay. And as I told the ladies yesterday, I started inheriting all kinds of things that a personnel director didn't do, including handling all of the budgeting for all personnel related stuff, which was about 75% of our budget. And then everything with an R. They said, you're going to handle all the R problems. And that was everything from trains stopped on the railroad crossing to rodent control. And then they gave me film permits. And I was like, okay, film permits do not have an R in them. And they're like, no, you are right for this problem. So everything started being R, which was a great experience working, stuff the personnel director didn't get to do. And that was really, I became more and more fascinated with it, probably grown more and more passionate about it and about what local government can do. I think this whole difficulties we've gone through with COVID, you can say everything you want to say, but my impression, and I may not be objective, is that the local governments have really been the ones who've handled this whole COVID experience better than any other level of government. So it just makes me proud to have been a part of it. And became an assistant manager, and then became the manager after 4 years. And I wasn't quite ready, didn't think I was ready to be the city manager, and Curtis left for a job as a county manager. And again, I was talking with Cal, and he said, well, you're going to apply. And I was like, nah, I'm not, I don't think doesn't fit into what I've already prescribed as my career pathway. And he said, well, Peggy, and then literally he said, well, Peggy, do you want to be a city manager or do you want to train a new city manager? And I thought, oh my God, the absolute worst thing I don't want to do is train a new city manager. I already had trained you, and we saw how well that worked. So I did apply for it. I was one of 10 people, the only woman they interviewed, and got that job, and did that for 25 years, and it was just really amazing.
Thank you. That is a great story. Thank you so much. And Valerie, I'd love to hear the path that took you to the manager's office and beyond. So talk to us for a moment.
Sure. And I think, like many of you, I looked up the chain of command and thought I could do better. And as the oft-quoted third Chinese curse goes, be careful what you wish for, you may get it. But seriously, being a city manager seemed easier looking from the outside. It was something that I had trained for, something I wanted to do, I was looking forward to. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about the, once I became a city manager, sort of what it was like. Since my other colleagues have so adroitly talked about the roadblocks and the experiences they had, and mine are very much the same. But on my first day as a city manager in Petersburg, Virginia, the editorial in the local newspaper, Progress Index, said that I was superwoman when I was hired, and now I was fair game. And this scared the heck out of me. They really made it clear that I was in their sights, and that proved to be true, that it was not going to be fair. And that I was going to have to prove myself to the satisfaction of the newspaper. Not a great way to start the first time in a new job in a new community. Almost immediately then, I was sued by white police officers as a named defendant. And a few months later, I found myself responding, recovering, and rebuilding after a devastating tornado that struck the Central Business District and destroyed a historic African-American neighborhood, Pocahontas Island. These experiences really made me question whether or not I had the fortitude for the job. So the roadblock for me was more internal than external. Did I think I could do the work? Were my male colleagues have fun? I absolutely did not find the work fun. Challenging, demanding, but not fun. I remember calling Robert Bobb, who was then the city manager in Richmond, Virginia. At one point, I was questioning my decision, and he did two things for me that really turned the tide. First, he took my call. And second, he met with me and he gave me the encouragement I needed to hang in there. And Lane Ramsey, who was the county administrator, and he did the same thing. Then I looked around the state of Virginia and realized that there was such an important network of support. And I was there as this sort of brand new green city manager with folks like Bob O'Neill and Jim Oliver and Tony Gardner, who actually brought me to Virginia. And so they provided for me a safety net and really served as my, if you will, kitchen cabinet. These were the people that I went to when I needed some guidance and some help, and I knew that they would keep my counsel. I was asked by Sherry to make an additional comment, and that is to remind us that cowboys get the arrows while the pioneers get the land. And the first women in the positions that we had. And I like to think of us as paving the way for the next generation, reducing the off-ramps, the bumps and the cracks in the road, but increasing the on-ramps, increasing opportunities for more people who look like us to be prepared to take on the responsibilities.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. So yesterday we did have a little bit of time to talk with each other, and I asked the question, what would you tell your self, your 22-year-old self? And I got interesting answers. And so Val, I'm going to start with you since you're up front now. What would you tell your younger self?
Well, I would start by just reminding myself of this notion of relentless patience that I got from John Pickering. Taking the time to learn as you go, but not letting others turn you around from your goals. Many times I was told that I was moving too fast, and what they didn't add on to the sentence, but what they meant is because I was a woman of color. You know, there was a place for me, and that place wasn't necessarily leadership. So setting your own path, being prepared to do the work. I would also tell my younger self to learn how to have a little fun and not take it so seriously. The guys were able to have more fun at it because they didn't take themselves as seriously. But I knew as a woman, and the first one, that I was in a different scenario, I was in a different environment, and I was going to have to prove that women and women of color could do the work. So for me, that was just more serious. Now that I'm older, I have a bit more of a sense of humor, If you come to my office, I have the editorial cartoons from the various communities I worked in. I have some of them in my office, so I'm developing a sense of humor as I get older. And also, I think I would tell myself, learn when work requires 100% and when 90% is good enough. Don't spin yourself out, making sure everything you ever touch is 100%, or you'll fade fast. Recognize where you need to invest your time and your energy, and then put it there. And then lastly, remember it's a team. You don't have to do it all by yourself. Provide people the opportunity to learn and to grow as you want to do. And you will find that you are going to be successful, as will your organization and community. So that's what I would tell my younger self.
Wow, thank you. Thank you. There are a lot of younger selves in the audience today. And so I hope you're taking notes, because these are great things to think about. So Peggy, I'm coming to you next. What would you tell your younger self?
Yeah, so, as I was reflecting on this yesterday and overnight is, basically I'm not sure I would, as I said, I'm not sure I would tell my 22-year-old self much. She was okay, made some real kind of courageous moves in terms of coming to Decatur, not knowing a soul, being young. And some of it, sometimes I think not knowing what to be scared of is a great benefit in life. And I got to an organization that, encouraged that and encouraged me. So, but on the other hand, I became the city manager when I was 32. I think there's a lot there's at least some stuff I would tell the 32-year-old self, because I think that was that period of taking on that lead role. One is, those conversations that you mull over for days or weeks and just get your whole stomach in a knot, and you're not sleeping about, just go ahead and have them, right? Because I can pretty much guarantee that the day after, the night after, and the day after I finally had those courageous conversations, I felt better than I had in a long time. And whether that's dealing with personnel issues or dealing with community issues that come around, because they're going to happen. I mean, as Valerie said, there's a lot of challenges, but had not really. I fretted over a lot of stuff once I became the city manager, and I would say don't fret as much. Get the conversations over with that need to happen, and be satisfied with that. I remember telling Curtis after he left, we had lunch, and I told him, I said, I have really come to hate you. And he's like, what? I said, you make this job look so easy, and it is not. And I've had it wasn't, right? But I think that's what I would say, is, and again, as Valerie would say, have a little fun. I do believe that humor is a great de-stress. Proper humor is a great distressor or de-stressor in the workplace. But yeah, I would just say have those courageous conversations, and move on past them.
Yeah, thank you. That is great words. Thank you so much. So Sherry, you had a little bit different path in life that you chose. Would you talk to us about that?
Oh, really? I don't know what you meant by different.
I'm talking about family and children.
Okay.
And yeah.
Thank you for that prompt. I was wondering how to bring that in. Yes, when I was 22, like Peggy, I was totally fearless. I didn't know what there was to fear. And I had as my guide, as I said, for the profession, Sylvester Murray. But I saw the USA with ICMA, and I met all the managers. I wrote articles, PM, I led seminars. So when I got ready to step out into a real job as in the field, people knew me, and I was invited to my first job as assistant city manager, Menlo Park, by Michael Bedwell. He actually had a first Black female city manager, Emma McFarland, very experienced, wise woman, and there I was, this young upstart. I didn't say this yesterday, but in the first city council meeting, the community, the Black community, came up uproarious about a loan to the city, a grant that had been taken back because they mishandled it. And the Black man at the podium said, well, I don't care if she's black, white, or polka dot, you better get that money back in here and fix our houses. So that was a stunning recollection of how I'm going to be faced when I take these roles. And I mentioned courageous in our documentary. It takes courage to do the things that you know need to be done. But sometimes I found out you learn better from forgiveness than you do getting permission. I was told that. So I kept on, when I left Menlo Park, I went to Long Beach. John Deaver invited me there again. He knew me, everybody knows me. Briefly, we were there, and he was known as John Deaver the Cleaver because he had to, and did, lay off and fire tons of people with the change in the California tax law. But so when I took the Menlo Park job, after said 20 other, Oberlin job, I followed his mantra, and I unfortunately started to swinging the axe and taking a lot of heads out because I could, and I felt like I needed to have a clean slate. I wouldn't do that again. At 22, I think I would have been better prepared about how to manage staff as they are. Fortunately, Jerry Fox, when he hired me in the county, Mecklenburg County, first Black female in law, he learned a lesson early on. He never fired anybody, even me, because I was always challenging. As you see, I wear my African garb. I'm very proud of our heritage, and I feel like I need to remind people that I'm not just your ordinary person. My mother told us, if you're going to do the same thing that the white man does, you don't need the job. You need to go in there and fix things, as Valerie said, but for all the community, not just. So what happened to me was more 32, as Peggy said. That's when I became the city manager in Oberlin. Within 2 months, I lost my mother in a very tragic car accident. So my whole world was turned around for about the 2.5 years that I was there. But I managed to accomplish some things, help people get housing, bring industry to the town. And then I just felt like time to do something. As I tell people, my biological clock started ticking, and I had focused solely on travel and career. And somehow I met a man that I was persuaded to have a child by, and we did that. And it was very courageous on my part to still go on in the city management field as a single mother. It turned out that I was, and I married somebody as well. So anyway, I think that, as I said, when we were growing up, we had to do this. It was like forced to do something with what you have to change the trajectory, as the word is today. But if I looked at it again, I really commend folk that can do it all. I tried to do it all, but I didn't succeed. I had a mental nervous breakdown. I had breast cancer, which we'll get into maybe later. So it was a lot of stress I put on myself to be the best. And with a young child raising him, he took the brunt of it. He reminds me sometimes, but he's also very proud of his mother. And he's the one that inspired me to start the film that we're doing in City Managers.
Thank you, Sherry. There are many people in this audience also trying to figure out how to balance family and work and life. So thank you for sharing that. I have a question, and I'm going to bounce back to Peggy for this one. And I'm curious about how important developing professional friendships, networks, how do you do that? I mean, you know, a lot of us go to state association meetings and we may not know a lot of people, so we'll sort of sit there. And I don't think that's the way to do it. So could you talk a little bit about the success you've had in creating networks, creating support groups or affinity groups?
Sure. As Felissa knows, I'm an I in the introvert scale. And so going to kind of post-conference receptions and all of that is, you know, not generally my strong point. But what I have found is that actually networks, and someone else said it earlier on a different seminar, webinar I was on, talked about the quality, not necessarily the quantity. So I've always seen my networking strength in trying to be a quality of those those networks, and started in the state association where I was only the third woman member they'd ever had. And at that point I was a personnel director and I was young, so they really had no clue what to do with me. And I, again, with Curtis and Cal, they were like, here's the one, you got to meet this member, you got to meet this person. And so they were really positive and strong in introducing me to people that I had, you know, they felt like I needed to meet. And I've tried to do that myself, particularly if I'm looking around a room or in a conference or in a session or a meeting and there's someone who's like, seems a little hesitant. You know, I like to just introduce them and say, hey, here's, or if I know them, you know, I've met them, here's who you need to meet. And then Valerie and I actually met across our paths ages ago when ICMA had the assistant steering committee. And so getting involved in your state or your regional or the international association on committees or work groups or workshops, I think is a really important piece of how you make those quality networks, because there are people I met in the assistant steering committee, which was a long time ago, who I still am really good friends with, who I check in with, and who are part of my support group. I was on the board with ICMA, and so I have a board class, and there's still, you know, and there are people, we travel together, we're friends, you know, that kind of relationship, because those are who I think, you know, when you hit those roadblocks and you hit that stressed out feeling, I mean, the reality is you need that vent. You need to be able to tell someone what's going on who understands, or at least if they don't understand, is willing to let you kind of self-correct while you're talking to them. And I just, you know, I really do enjoy really getting to know people, and more than just kind of a surface, how many business cards can I give out somewhere? And as I think Valerie said, talking about taking the call, I mean, that is really, really, really important to me. If someone from another city or county, no matter where they're from, or a young person who's interested in the profession, you know, my rule is if they call, I'm going to do whatever I can to make time for them, because I think that's important. And in my organization, I was, you know, join ICMA or join your professional association, and doing the same thing for them that people did for me, because I think that's sharing that gift. And a lot of times, particularly when, you know, if you're a deputy or assistant manager or a manager, there aren't a lot of people in your town who are doing what you do, right? So you have to have these wider, broader roles. Yeah. And again, it's just, I look at the names who are here now, some of whom I met through ICMA, some I've met through the Alliance for Innovation or the National Civic League. Actually saw that my mayor, who's the current mayor of Decatur, but the last mayor I worked with is on here. So being a good city manager, want to thank the mayor for being here. Thank her for all the work she does as an elected official. She is really a #1 AAA mayor in our community, and I was very fortunate to work with her. So yeah, I think for me, it was looking for quantity and long-lasting, deeper relationships than just let's pass out, you know, how many cards can I pass? How many friends can I have on Facebook? How many likes can I have on Instagram? I think it's the depth of those things versus inherently the quantity of those things.
Yeah, I really love that. You know, it reminds me of make the call and take the call as being really strong ways to connect. So thank you, Peggy. And I'm going to go to you, Val, because I know beside the assistant steering committee that you and Peggy have connected in many ways. And you are, you know, where I know it's hard to believe, but I tend to be an introvert. Peggy tends to be an introvert. We have Valerie, who is a hostess with the mostest. So it's like we want to hang out with Valerie when we go places, and Sherry too, because they're ready. So Valerie, we talk a little bit about how you go about building that support structure or affinity groups?
Like the two of you, I too am, if I have my own devices, more of an I. when you take on a job that requires you to be more engaging with people, to really start conversations, then you learn how to do that, but it's a practice. And it's not something that comes naturally. And I was really surprised to find out how many elected officials I work for were also introverts. And as a staff to elected officials, whether you're the city manager or not, you're still their staff, then you have to be the one to do the outreach for them and do the introductions and help them get on the committees they're interested in serving on at the National Civic League meetings, et cetera. But for me, building a support group and having support was essential. I don't think I could have done the job without that support. I found being a city manager was a very lonely job. You have to keep your own counsel. You know, both the bright side of life in the community and, you know, the dark side of life in the community. As a woman, I was stalked and I was threatened, receiving hate mail. But I needed someone who could kind of relate to what I was going through, people who could give me good counsel. If I would call, they would give me good advice. Whether or not I took it was different. And I always felt when I called my mother, I knew that she was going to say that I was right. I was the smart one. Everybody else was crazy, not me. And sometimes you just need to hear that. Sometimes you just need a hug to keep it going. So I found a support base really important. And again, like Peggy, you know, our careers, we, you know, have the same generation. Our experiences were very much intertwined at ICMA, because through that assistant steering committee, I think we met friends that are our friends 30 years later. We did travel for ICMA. I remember going to Russia to try to convince them at the change in their government structure to look at a city manager rather than a strong mayor form of government. I mean, that's and those are wonderful experiences, as she said. It's the quantity and the character of the relationship, not the number of casual acquaintances you have, but people that you can call on when you're in trouble. It's also helpful that when you do get in trouble, if you find yourself in a where you want to leave, your friends can help give you an option. You know, they can hire you for a couple months to take on a job, or they can be a lead for another opportunity in a different community. And so just have people who understand, that you trust, and who can be your friends. I say to my friends is they knew me before I was a city manager, and they're going to be my friends after I'm a city manager. They're not my friends just because I'm a city manager.
Oh, those are wonderful words. Yes, they are. Thank you, Valerie. So a question that I was asked to ask you when we were thinking about this, and I'm going to start with you, Sherry. And the question is, how do you know when it's time to go?
Well, wait a minute. I didn't get a chance to talk about building support groups, so I want to touch on that a minute. Because ICMA obviously was my first most important support group. Having worked there, I got on the board. I was active with the Women's Task Force, Nancy Foy Cox. And even as I passed out of the field briefly to become a mother and write books and get into the county management side of things, I kept in touch and people kept in touch with me. But I must say, without my personal connections, I would not have made it through that field. I talked to people, as you were talking about the frustrations of the job. You know what my friends would say? Well, that sounds exciting, Sherry. That's very interesting. And I'm pulling out my hair going crazy, trying to deal with what I was doing. But I would say this also, which I didn't get to mention yesterday. For Black public administrators, I must commend the National Forum for Black Public Administrators. I started trying to get that going through Mike Gold Rogers and Elijah Rogers when I was in California, but I was making a baby when they were making the organization. It came out the same time, 1983. So I didn't get to do as much with them, but Marsha Connor is doing a bang up job as executive director. The people that they help, the Eli program, I'm even the local chapter here in Florida. I'm just impressed with that network method for our people. Now, as for me, when to go, mostly I didn't have a choice. If I wanted to stay alive and work, I get fired, so I move on. It was just at the time when I was going through the motions, it was a badge of honor to be fired. But when I left Oberlin, Ohio, I was duly depressed about it. But I wrote, it was a Beachcomber book was written, and I told everybody what happened there. so I can't change what history was. But fortunately, I'm glad that I left. It was the time that I was able to begin this family issue that I was telling you about. So as I said to you yesterday, I don't really go into jobs planning to be a lifer, as I call it. I commend the Peggies of the world, but my I don't know what you would call it, my makeup was to go in, find out what's to be done. I get things accomplished in 2 to 2.5 years, my average, than people had tried to do for 20 years. And I haven't mentioned my stay at Lawrence Township, which was 10 years after Oberlin. I was city manager there. And I walked in, unknown quantity as we do, 25,000 people. And they were thrashing around the park, the city park, for 20 years it had been on the docket. In my 2.5 years there, I brought the community together. I used some of the tactics I learned at ICMA, group talk, and they got that, it was a bond issue. They got the bond issue passed and the park was built. So for me, I have 2 ways to go. I either go when I want to leave, which was my choice, to try a different thing, like going back into being a city manager in Lawrence. I left Mecklenburg County on my own terms. Or when I feel like it's getting a little hot in the kitchen and I better get out before they kick me out.
So we had some fun yesterday, Sherry and I was teasing her, talking about Sherry's style being the go in and clean up Dodge and move on.
Moving right along, that's my phrase, yes.
Moving right along. Thank you, Sherry. All right, Peggy, let me come to you. Wow. Decatur, a fabulous community, and talk about how you knew when it was time to go.
So, like I said, I had promised them I would be there 2 years and kept re-upping that 2-year commitment. And so it took, it was not something I came to overnight. But I had kind of finished 30 years of service and I was like, that's pretty cool. And I was just like, you know what? 35 is just a nice number. I don't, so I had kind of decided there were not a whole lot of people who knew that 35 had kind of become this sounds like you've done a pretty good job, but it did give me the opportunity over those next 5 years to continue to work with just this excellent staff that I had developed. I mean, one of the beauties of being around a place 35 years is you really do get to build your own teams. And I had, your own team and people around you who were just brilliant. So I knew that I was going to be there long enough to make sure that when I left, there would be this just remarkable team in place, and it is. Also, I had been working or in school since I was 14. So, and I had been, I'm going to give a plug for ICMA-RC, which I was also on the board of ICMA-RC until recently. You have a chance, and if you don't have RC and you have some other deferred comp, they're good, that's fine too. But I just started plugging money in that as soon as I could. And so I had built a decent, kind of fallback position for what I thought was going to be what I called rewirement. But yeah, and I just wanted to do some stuff that was different without having, without having to be the person that, the city manager, although I've done that again twice. So somehow I get pulled back into it, and have more flexibility in my life. I had gone through a period where both my parents had some illness, and both of them subsequently passed away. And yeah, I just really wanted to, I felt like I would have more control over my life and my time. And if I wanted to not do something for a month, or if I wanted to go to France for a month, or if whatever, I wanted that flexibility in my life. So there was a plan. There were a few people who knew about it. Most didn't, because I didn't need, one thing I didn't want to have happen is everybody's like, she's going to be leaving in 5 years, so we'll just wait her out. I didn't want to cause all that kind of all that angst and internal angst and external angst in the organization. So I think we handled it pretty well. But yeah, I mean, and I would not have stayed. I mean, I had opportunities to have left along the pathway, and
Right.
never could find an organization that I liked better in the location where it was at, which was perfect for my lifestyle. And so, yeah, but there was, I just knew, I don't know, I just knew that it was time to start planning that next. I wanted to have a lot of time in my life to enjoy whatever the lot of time of my life was going to be.
The new adventure, right? I love it. Thank you, Peggy. So Valerie, how about you? How did you know when to go?
Basically, when it felt like deja vu, that I had stopped learning, I was experiencing the same sort of issues and challenges over and over again, repeating previous experiences, kind of the Groundhog Day was one experience. The other, as a city manager, one of the things that I wanted to do was to work in larger communities. So opportunities arose. I started with a 25,000 or so person community and in a big city, Cincinnati. And so that was important. So sometimes it was just the timing of when an opportunity came, and the other was I was ready for a new set of experiences. And then towards the end of my career as city manager, I realized that there are certain kinds of people that I like working with, people that I respect and support, and that the character of the council in their goals and their agenda and what they want to achieve for their community, that became ever more important to me.
Nice, thank you. Yes, and you have also found a way to move your talents into an amazing new arena that supports local governments and continues with all the connections. In fact, it's broader, much broader. It's really beautiful. So we have, maybe 8-10 minutes. And so I'm going to ask each one of you, what would you like to leave our audience with today? And then I'm going to open it and see if we have a question or two that people would like to ask. So Valerie, would you start with?
Sure. Well, believe it or not, I was a cheerleader. And we used to do this cheer. You can do it, you can. So I would just say that to you, that you can do it if you want to. It's about preparation, it's about context, it's about timing. And those are all things that are in your control. So you can do it.
Love it. Thank you. Thank you. Sherry, final words.
Well, I failed to mention one of my jobs was Guilford County, Greensboro, North Carolina. That's actually where I ended my career between city and county government. And I too felt that I had done my thing as a city manager and county. So when I took early retirement in 1998, I got involved with cultural, local, historical groups and formed nonprofits. Atlantic Beach Historical Society, I wrote a book about it. And so it became easy for me to do other things, always using my management skills. I always credit being a city manager giving me the ability to do anything I chose to do. And that was important for me. So I would say to those of you who think you want to get into doing this job, do it. Just plunge in. Don't worry about the roadblocks. You'll knock them down the way we did, or you'll do the best you can. But also make sure that you got a plan in mind for a family if you want to. I was a late bloomer. Now at age 73, I can see what happens when you wait till 36 to have a baby. You're really old when they're grown. And also to plan for life after, whether it's consulting like Peggy or the wonderful job that Valerie has with Kettering. So I don't do any work for pay, but I enjoy my nonprofit work, and people have looked to me because they say, you know how to do everything, Sherry, because you were a city manager.
I love it. Thank you, Sherry.
And Felicia,
yes,
if I might,
yes.
I will say that Sherry may not work for money, but she certainly knows how to task the rest of us free as well.
Oh my God, I forgot to mention the film one more time. It's called Coloring America's Cities, the Emergence of Black African-American Managers, and also the history and legacy. And speaking of support group, thank God I kept in touch with my Michael Rogers, he runs our Zoom meetings, with Cy Murray, of course, who's the other co-star with me. Norton Bonaparte, who I did a film already with on Trayvon Martin, he was the city manager at the time. And of course, my first boss, Don Boric. And I hope I'm not leaving somebody out. Valerie is on the team, but she doesn't make all the meetings though. And so we've had a great opportunity to reconnect after years. And we're going to do this film, right, Valerie? It's taken us a while to get some financial support for it, but the interviews have been done. She's one of the interviewees. So I do want to make a note of that.
Thank you, Sherry. And Valerie, since you've both given sort of some final words, Valerie, can you pop the name of the film in the chat? Yes?
Of our film? You want me to do it?
Sure.
Go ahead, Sherry. Go ahead. Yeah, that's fine.
I know how to chat.
I want Peggy's last words here. What words would you leave this group with?
Yeah, just local government. I mean, if you truly want to make a difference in the world, I believe you start with your local place, right? You can't, the world's not going to change unless you can change where you are locally. And local governments, quite honestly, again, I'm not objective, but I truly believe that government work and government leadership and management through your professional association and being either in leadership or management in the organization are just so, I can't imagine having done anything else. It's even when it's challenging, at the end of the day, we make a difference every day in everyone's life, because local government's where you get the water turned on. It's where you flush your toilets. It's where your garbage gets picked up. It's who comes to your house when it's on fire. It's who provides you with the parks that you play in. I would just encourage you, when you're having a down day, go in, turn on the water, and remember that, you're contributing to drinking that water or flushing that toilet or picking up that garbage.
Oh, I love it.
It just is an amazing career choice.
Absolutely. And people say local government, public servants have a passion and a purpose like none others, because truly not a job, it's a calling.
Yeah. I'll say this really quick. It's the only place, the only government level where you can see a problem, come up with a solution to a problem, pitch the problem, work your solution, evaluate your solution, and then start over again if you have to. You can't do that in state government. You're never going to be a nuts to bolts, soup to nuts person. Local government gives you that opportunity. So now I'll be quiet.
That is great. No, what wonderful final words. We have asked a couple times for questions, and I have not seen any. So I think we are finishing right on time. Okay, I have one question here. What advice can you give me to transition from being a state worker in higher education to a local government person? Anybody? Valerie, why don't you take that?
I would say look at your local government and see where your skill sets are aligned. I'm sure in addition to your state job, you do volunteer work at your church and your community and your sorority. So what are your skill sets and where is that place for you? Is it the recreation department? Many city governments have a liaison role with the public schools. If you're in Virginia, you actually are funding public schools, so there's a direct relationship. So find where your skill sets are and identify the local government community where that skill set can be realized, and then make some cold calls to a couple of the city managers and say, I've got this skill set, and you're fighting with your school board, and maybe I can help be a liaison and improve the relationship. So we didn't talk much about it, but most of us worked very hard to create opportunities for learning, and I volunteered to do an awful lot of work as a junior staff person. 1, for the experience, 2, for the visibility, and 3, just because I was curious and I wanted to know what being an economic development specialist was. And I talked the economic development boss into creating classes for city employees, including me, on how to do development financing and got my certificate from the association. So, make proposals, offer ideas, volunteer to do the staff work. And you'd be surprised how many yeses you get.
Beautiful. So I'm going to ask the audience, if you will, join me down in the reaction button below, and let's give our panelists some love here. You can clap, you can cheer, you can give them a big smile. But
And Felicia, we want to say a special shout out to our friends who are on the call. We mentioned some of those names.
Yeah.
Thanks for participating and joining us and continuing to be a part of our network of support and of love. So thanks.
And I want to say thanks to Felissa. She's been our moderator in charge, which is a very important role with us three. So thank you, Felissa.
Pioneers all. I really appreciate, love each of you. So we're going to close this. It has been recorded. So if you want to share this with your colleagues, your friends, we'll let you know when the recording is available. And again, wow, Sherry Suttles, Peggy Merriss, and Valerie Lemmie, thank you. Thank you for giving us not only a platform, but a jump off part. Thank you for the difference you've made and continue to make. Bye, y'all.
Bye.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you.